Did pretty well last year against us. That's all I'm going to say. So let's talk about things less important, Senator. Greece.
Yeah.
And economic calamity in Europe that could spread to the United States of America. It appears that the people of Greece are going to literally play dice with the economy of Europe and the world.
That's in Greece. Remember, in Europe, it's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
A small country with a lot of debt, but they have larger countries, as you know, like Italy and Spain and all of Europe. The European banks are really in bad shape, considering everything. But I believe you hit it on the head. I don't know the future of the European Union. We're going to find out in probably another few weeks. But this European debt situation is just beginning. This is going to be a slow drip, probably for a long time.
And Chuck, Italy is a much larger economy, but in terrible shape.
Well, yeah, and I'm curious, Senator, I was talking to a Treasury official who said he thought Europe has the money that there's enough money in the northern countries, you know, when you look at Norway, the bigger economies up there in Germany, Europe can fix Europe. So what do you think of this idea that they may reach out to China for a bailout?
Well, they already, China is everywhere, and they're already talking, I bet, to some degree. And of course, China can always buy bonds, buy the euro, and they've done a lot of that.
Are you comfortable with that?
Oh, well, it's not my comfort zone. My comfort zone would be that Europe would be taking care of themselves, and they would be in good shape, and we would be in better shape. But what happens in Europe will affect us. Don't make any...
Explain that to the viewers, exactly why it should be important and why we should be looking globally at how our financial systems interrelate and be watching with a very careful eye what happens in Europe and specifically Greece.
Excellent question. But we're intertwined with Europe. Our economies are big time. We sell a lot to Europe. We buy a lot from them. A lot of our banks are exposed, maybe not to the extent that the European banks are, still exposed there. So what happens there affects us. It could tilt us into a big recession faster than anything. So in Europe, being the European Union, it's one of the big economic, powerhouses of the world. And the question is, will it keep sputtering along? Will Germany keep exporting things? Will Germany carry all of Europe? Can it politically do it? Boy. I don't think it can politically do it because 2/3 people are saying no.
Senator, how do you reconcile what's good for Germany and the Germans, right, who want to preserve the integrity of the euro and avoid inflation and devaluation of the currency, and what's good for the average Greek citizen who sees in the future years and years, decades of what looks from their point of view like peonage, basically, like paying back these debts that were run up. To their vantage point, it would be better to get out of the euro, devalue, and get on with life, wouldn't it?
It might be. A lot of people have argued that, said, look, you're going to see the breakup of the union because Greece can't pay that money back. Politically, the political forces are not there even to pay half of it back. Austerity is not a very good thing for politicians to talk about.
But, the thing is, Gene, imagine if you're a German citizen.
Yeah.
And you've got like one of the highest savings rates in Europe, maybe even the world this side of China. Your government has done everything right over the past decade. You have made the small sacrifices over time. And to the south of you have Greece, who has been reckless and who now threatens the entire economic balance of Europe. And you have to bail them. I mean, I'm not concerned about what the Greeks think because they have been reckless and irresponsible. It's just like California. They've been reckless and irresponsible over 30 years. So now, why do we care what the Greeks think?
Because it looks like it's going to go to a referendum. And if they vote it down, then that could have an impact on my pocketbook and yours. Our bank account.
You're talking about how they're going to be facing austerity in the future. Yes, they are. And whose fault is it? It is their fault.
I wasn't fault or blame, but I'm saying, looking at it from their point of view, you're sitting there, you're a Greek retiree.
Right.
Sure, sure, you got the sweetheart deal, but what are you going to do? You're going to go back to work at age 52 or whatever, and what are you going to do?
Wow.
I'm serious.
Age 52.
Age 52.
They're
retired.
Or some would argue
so what are you
they
going to
go
do?
to back to work, period. The Germans would say they don't work. They get retirement at age 55 and so forth. There's an argument both ways, but I see economic chaos coming out of all this unraveling. And if something doesn't happen, watch Greece, but watch Italy and watch Spain.
You know what this was described to me as just sort of why this is so politically unpopular was described to me as is basically Europe is setting up a $1 trillion TARP fund, but for governments and banks. So that was the deal that was cut, and it's not just going to be for Greece, right? It's going to be used to capitalize Italy, what's going on in Italy, all the quote unquote, and I know this is a bad term, the pig countries, right? Ireland, Spain, Greece, and Portugal.
Right. Well, so ultimately it's for governments, ultimately for the banks, though, right? I mean, because they're holding the bonds, and if
it's going to be for the banks and the governments. It's going to be different than our TARP because our TARP wasn't for governments. Remember, they tried to get state governments involved.
Well, what's happened there over the years, the banks have been encouraged to make these loans to Southern Europe and elsewhere, and now they don't have the capital in the banks. The good question is, will $1 trillion or $1 trillion euros be enough? It might not be.
That's scary.
It may not be.
My God.
You saw what happened at Bank of America yesterday. They're having to back down off fees. A lot of anger and unrest regarding the big banks. When you go and campaign in Central and Southern Alabama, all across rural Alabama, do you have, and you do a lot of town hall meetings out there, do the good people of Alabama ask you why the big banks have gotten bigger?
Oh,
do they want them broken up? Why can't the 4 or 5 biggest banks that are still too big to fail be broken up?
Well, Dr. Volker asked the other question. If they're too big to fail, are they too big to exist? And that's a good question.
Are they too big to exist?
Well, some of them obviously are, and some of them are, if they don't get their house in order, they might not exist. They're going to have to sell off parts to survive.
Well, you know, Bank of America
might have to sell off parts.
Bank of America is trying to spin off some parts, but you look at, like, for instance, tell the American people, and I know you will, the truth, if Citi tomorrow has a problem, they're going under, Bank of America, JP Morgan, all of these big banks, we're in a position where we're going to have to bail them out again.
I hope not.
We'll have to. I mean, you voted against the bailout the last time. You know that will happen again.
I hope it won't, and I'll tell you, if we implement the Basel III accords for more capital, they are better regulated. Maybe we won't go down that line. But the question I think we got to ask, are we better off with bigger banks than we were? Question is no.
So does the Occupy Wall Street movement have a point?
Well, there's a lot of frustration out there everywhere. They see big salaries, they see big banks.
Are you sympathetic to their
Well,
concerns?
I'm sympathetic to unemployment and the failure for this administration or everybody to create fewer and fewer jobs. That's frustration.
Okay.
All right.
Senator Shelby, thank you very much.
I got 2 words for